Hello, everyone. My name is Kyle Davison Bear. Welcome to Hope You're Curious. At this channel, we love questions. We love curiosity. We love seeking the truth because we believe every honest question leads to God as long as you follow it all the way to the answer. And today's question comes from Philip Grobler, 7253. It's a simple question, but those are some of the best. Simple, bold, direct, punchy. Who or what made God? Who or what made God? Brilliant question. Because everyone should ask this at some point. If you have little kids growing up in church, this question usually comes up at some point. Who made God? It's a great question. When you're answering a little child, well, I'll say this. This question often comes from two different directions that I've seen. It comes from little children just wondering innocently, like, who made God? It also comes as an attack from a lot of atheists, and it's meant to undermine the idea of God, that you can't posit God as the explanation for where everything came from, because then you'd have to answer who made God. And then the point of the question is supposed to make the idea of God ridiculous, that you can't appeal to God because then you have to explain who created God, and then you have this infinite chain of explaining. And so those are the two different avenues that I usually encounter this question. Let me deal with the child first, then I'll deal with the atheist first. Atheist second, rather. To deal with a child, if someone's coming up to you and it's a genuine, curious question, who made God? First, praise them for asking the question, because that's good. It shows that you're thinking. It's a good question. You need to be asking that. And the answer is encoded right in the Bible itself. It's in God's very name. When God shows up to Moses, he appears as a fire in a bush that doesn't burn up. It's a way of capturing Moses' attention. Of course, God isn't fire, but it's just a way to draw Moses' attention so God could talk to him. And when Moses asks, who are you? Who should I say is sending me? God says, I am who I am. It's this amazing name that the whole purpose, the whole basis of the name is to point to God's existence. That the central fact of who God is, the central identifying, defining fact of God is that he is. I am who I am. Not that he began to be, but that I am. Just always, at every point, in anything that could ever be considered time, God is. That's his name. It's his way of saying he was not created. God has no beginning. He has no ending. He just is. His existence did not need to be caused to exist. It just is. And so I tell the child, God is the only person who never had to be created. He just is. He's the creator. All of us are created things. God created all of us, but he's the creator. And he just is. And for a little child, a lot of times that answer will suffice. But when you come to, what I said, the atheist who often brings this as an argument, brings this as an attack, you have to go a little bit deeper. Not a lot deeper, actually. This question is very easy to answer, because when you look at the idea of who created God or where did God come from, the reality is that at the bottom of creation, there has to be something eternal, infinite, uncreated. There has to be, logically. Because everything that you look around, everything you see is finite. It is limited. It has a beginning. It has an ending. It is this big and no bigger. It has this much energy and no more. It has existed for this length of time and no more. And everything around us, everything about our universe is finite. It is limited. It has boundaries. Our universe began to exist. It is expanding in space. If our universe was infinite in space, it wouldn't be expanding. If our universe was infinite in time, it wouldn't have a beginning. Our universe is finite, limited, boundaries on everything, which means you follow that chain of existence back. Where did everything come from? Where did everything come from? Where did everything come from? If it came from, let's say the first finite moment is, when the Big Bang started, the first instant of the Big Bang, going and exploding and creating everything. Say that that's the first finite thing. Where did that come from? Something has to exist before the first finite thing. And this is true whether the Big Bang is the start of our universe or whether there were 15 million Big Bangs before that. Either way, whatever is the first finite thing, whatever is the first created thing, there has to be something before that, something uncaused, something uncreated, that has to be there at the bottom so that it can cause the first created thing to begin existing. so that it can cause the first finite thing to begin existing. If that's not there, if there's nothing uncreated, if there's nothing infinite, if there's nothing eternal, then there couldn't be anything finite either, because nothing would exist before the first finite thing to cause it to begin existing. At the bottom of existence, there has to be something eternal or infinite. And your options are usually God or the universe. If the universe has always existed, then okay, that answers the question. If God is infinite, if he is eternal, then that answers the question. He's the one who creates everything. And so if you have these two options, you have to figure out which one is it. Is the universe eternal or is God eternal? And as we addressed in a few episodes ago, the universe is not eternal. It is not infinite. Like I just said a minute ago, there's nothing about our universe that is infinite. Everything about it is finite, bounded, limited in all its aspects. Our universe just doesn't match the criterion of an infinite thing. Our universe is finite, limited. It needs something else to begin it, something else to exist before it, to cause it to come into being. And so at the bottom of existence, there has to be something infinite, eternal. In other words, there has to be something not created. So when you ask the question, who created God? The answer is, at the bottom of the chain of existence, there has to be an uncreated creator. There has to be, otherwise nothing would exist. Logic requires that something is not created. Something has to just be. And now a lot of times when this question is asked, again, the point of the question is to say that the idea of God is ridiculous. Because if you say that, if you ask who created God, you can't appeal to God as the creator of everything, because then you have to answer, well, who created God? And then it just has this infinite chain of explanations. And yet, usually the people who posit that explanation will say either the universe existed forever or I don't know, in answer to the question of where did everything come from, which kind of reveals the double standard. Because if you say that you can't appeal to God and say that he was always there, you ask them about this universe. Where did the universe come from? And if they say, well, the universe was just always here, it doesn't need an explanation. Okay, that's what I just said about God. Which reveals that the point of the answer isn't to say that it's ridiculous that something exists forever. It's that they don't like the idea of God being the thing that exists forever. They're fine saying the universe will exist forever. They just don't want to say that God could exist forever. And so the force of that objection is not about the logic of something having to exist forever. It's about the theological idea of I just don't want a God to exist. And so that's it. This is a pretty short episode because the answer to the question, who or what made God, is pretty simple. No one. God is. That's why he gives his name as I am who I am. That God is the I am, the one who eternally is. The one to whom all of time is present tense. He just is. It's not that he was, it's that at all points, at everything you could ever call time, God is. And it's a fascinating concept. Even Plato acknowledged that there has to be something called the unmoved mover, something that has always existed that isn't moved but causes everything else to move. Logic requires that there has to be something at the bottom, something uncreated, something that's always been there, so that it can cause everything else to begin existing. And that's God. Because there are no other alternatives. Our universe does not match the criterion. Our universe is finite. It is not infinite. It cannot be that thing. But God is. So thanks for watching this episode. As always, please like, share, and subscribe. If you've got questions, drop them down in the comments, and I'd love to answer them. And I've had some people challenge the answers before, and man, that's okay too. If you think my answer is just ridiculous, feel free to say so. But give me a specific critique. Tell me which part specifically you think is ridiculous. Don't just say, you're wrong. Tell me, okay, specifically, I think you're wrong about this. And that lets us have a conversation. I can respond to that in a future episode, and we can go in depth, and we can have a really great running dialogue on this. So if you object to my answer, that's fine. Drop it in the comment. Just be specific about why, and we'll keep the conversation going. So thanks for your time, friends. I'll see you down the road. Jesus loves you more than you know.